Welcome, everybody, back to the Fretboard Journal podcast. I'm your host, Jason Verlinde, talking to you from Seattle, Washington. As always, that is John Rauhaus playing in the background. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for being a part of the Fretboard Journal community. If you haven't yet, please go to fretboardjournal.com and click on the subscribe button and join us. Our 59th issue is out now, mailing to everybody. Jeff Tweedy of Wilco is on the cover. I did that interview. We also have some truly remarkable interviews with Ella Feingold, and we've got Daniel Marcus Clark writing about a truly wild D'Angelico archtop. We have more D'Angelico coverage coming in issue 60, and so much more. Every issue of the Fretboard Journal is meant to be this sort of immersive experience where you learn a lot about things that you maybe didn't know about beforehand, and we try to really find stories that are off the beaten path, but that anyone can appreciate. And this issue is truly no exception. And we are midway through issue 60, and it's looking to be even better. So I hope you'll join us. Go to fretboardjournal.com. Like I said, click on the subscribe button. If you want to have the time of your life this summer, join us at our Fretboard Summit taking place August 20th to 22nd in Chicago at the Old Town School of Folk Music. To register for that, go to fretboardsummit.org. I can tell you, let the cat out of the bag. Chris Martin IV is going to be there, as is Bob Taylor, as are the crew from Collings Guitars, Iris Guitars, Yamaha, and so many other luminaries, along with some of our favorite musicians from this podcast and the pages of our magazine. 80 luthiers from literally around the world will be showing off their latest and greatest creations for you to buy or try out. We have a lot of surprises in store for you. I know Josh Scott from JHS is coming back, and so many other Fretboard Summit and Fretboard Journal favorites. So I hope you'll join us. Go to fretboardsummit.org, register. It is my dream weekend, and maybe it's yours too. And as I was talking to Brad Barr during this conversation, I'm hoping he'll come. I'm not sure if he can make it, but boy, we sure brainstormed on a couple of really cool ideas that I'd love to see at this summit or a future summit. Before we get to my conversation, huge thanks to Mike and Mike's Guitar Bar right here in Seattle, Washington, one of my favorite guitar stores. I love following them because I learn something with every post that they make. They also have a wildly cool Substack where you can learn even more. If you really want to read like long form articles on gear history, go there. mmguitarbar.com, for those of you who don't live in Seattle, is how you can see their full inventory, and they do have an incredible repair and restoration shop right here in Seattle. We are also brought to you by our friends at Stringjoy Strings. Go to stringjoy.com, use the discount code Fretboard when you check out. You will get a discount off your first order. And last but not least, Peghead Nation, where you can learn almost anything you want to about acoustic instruments. Whether you want to be a better guitar player, mandolin player, or banjo player. I don't think they have Brad Barr's thread trick yet on Peghead Nation, but maybe soon somebody will do it. Maybe Brad will teach there. I don't know. There are a whole bunch of great lessons there. I am a student at Peghead Nation myself. And again, if you use the discount code Fretboard when you check out, you can get your first month free over there. Those are my big announcements. Brad Barr has an album out with the Barr Brothers called Let It Hiss. Go check that out. Go follow him on Instagram. We scratched the surface of some of the posts that he does in this conversation, but man, it's one of my favorite things to see a Brad Barr post on my Instagram feed. Only other thing I want to shout out, if you haven't checked out the Truth About Vintage Amps podcast in a while, we just posted our 165th episode, and it was one of my favorite episodes to date. Somebody said, Jason, you laughed more in that episode than any other episode I've ever heard. So if you want to hear my laugh, if it's not irritating, or you just want to go hear a bunch of people talk about their amps on the fritz and hear what amp tech Skip Simmons tells them to do to fix them, go on over there. It's not a scary place. I don't know anything about electronics or anything, but I always have a blast doing that podcast with Skip, and you might enjoy listening to it as well. And now, enjoy this conversation with Brad Barr, half of the Barr Brothers, one of my favorite people to come through this office recently. I hope you enjoy it. Hey, Brad.
Hey, Jason.
You have been kind of blowing up the internet, or at least Instagram, with... what do we call it? The string trick.
I haven't put a name to it yet. I would call it I would call it the Nicolae Neascu string bow, maybe. I don't know. I learned it from that great violinist Nicolae Neascu, so I try and always give him props for it, as it's, any great idea I've ever had, I've just lifted from someone else, or had some kind of great divine intervention to loan me something for a while. So yeah, I'm not going to pretend. I'm not going to claim to to have the authority to put a name to it myself. But I'd be curious. I bet the Romanians, the Roma, have a name for that. Actually, that would be something I should look up.
And that violinist you referenced was in a movie.
Yeah, he was. He was a member of the group Taraf de Haidouks, and in the early 90s, a director named Tony Gatliff decided he wanted to follow the path of, what at that time would have been called gypsy music, and now I don't believe. I think people have found that term to be offensive, so they call it Roma. But the music that was inspired by Eastern sounds coming from India, Pakistan, and which traveled west into Europe, and when they reached Romania, it became I'm not an ethnomusicologist, so there are people out there that could explain it better, but those kind of tones with a lot of flat nines and a certain kind of sadness and exuberance happening at the same time. When in Romania, groups like Taraf de Haidouks with the cymbalum, a lot of violins, accordions, and a lot of on-time signatures. That was the music that emerged there, and he was a member of that group. The film goes on to follow the music into France, where it was received by people like Django Reinhardt and Stefan Grappelli, who turned it into this hot jazz. Just the virtuosity, is a big part of it. The way these players are, how the facility they have, and then I think the movie ends in Spain, where it is flamenco music that absorbed all that kind of those techniques and those sounds. Yeah.
And you are creating this incredibly haunting music, which honestly, a 1950s Gibson acoustic normally isn't considered haunting. Do you remember the first time you grabbed dental floss or sewing thread or whatever you first used and thought, I got to try this on my guitar?
I do. Yeah. I was living in Boston. I had just seen that movie, I think in a theater. And I went home and in fact, I did try it with dental floss. My dad is a dentist, and every year gives me, he's retired now, but he every year would give us these boxes of dental floss, which would sit in the box in a shelf in our bathroom. And I remember going home and grabbing that first, and that didn't work. Too waxy, too slippery, not texturized enough. I don't remember how many different kinds of threads and strings and things I went through to eventually land on polyester, but I knew there was something going on with, with a rosined piece of horsehair has a kind of the texture of it, the friction that they get, which is why it makes it so ideal for a bow, which is how I settled on polyester sewing thread. And now it's just whatever kind of cheap polyester seems to work better. So it's funny, my neighbors were having a yard sale or throwing out all this stuff, and one thing they had was just this box of cheap polyester thread. So I now have a lifetime supply of it at my house, and I lose a few spools a year, but I try and always keep one on me. And yeah, it is a haunt. I guess as a guitar player, I'm always looking for a way into some new approach to the guitar. Like, that's what's interesting. There's a songwriter in me who kind of, looks to simplify things and try and create a space for the words. But there's also the guitarist in me is always looking for some kind of left turn, whether that be a cool setup with the pedals, with the electric or the acoustic, trying to find some kind of, or the technique. I think that's what's so appealing about this technique is you don't need any effects at all. It itself is so expressive and such a spin on what we know is possible with the acoustic guitar, and a reminder that there's still great things to be discovered with just an acoustic instrument and a little bit of ingenuity and some physics.
Yeah. We just shot a video with you doing this, and there's a whole bunch of them on Instagram that folks should check out. You mentioned that you do it at arm's length, and that's just because then you don't run out of string, right?
Right. That's right. Yeah. An arm's length, that's become the challenge with this technique is, I only have the length of my arm to get that phrase out. So trying to get the, whatever phrase I'm building, make sure it doesn't exceed the length of the arm. And if it does, to be able to, because you have to drop the thread once you get to the end of it and come back and grab it back at the strings. The regrab is part of this technique I've been working on. The thread sometimes just sort of floats down and I can grab it. That's in ideal barometric conditions. I can grab that thread before it even sort of falls back down. But the other nice thing about it is it keeps my playing in these kind of breaths. So I don't. Inherent to the technique is this kind of breathing, and I found it keeps my playing patient when I'm using that technique. Keeps it patient, and the same way a saxophone player only has the breath in their lungs to express the melody. That's what I have to work with, and it's a great limitation. Anytime a limitation is sort of imposed there by virtue of the technique, it usually has great results, I find.
Yeah. And you were saying earlier that at live shows, almost like a party trick, you can bring your brother into the fold and the string gets longer and you pass it through the crowd and stuff.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many fascinating ways to use it that I'm sure we haven't explored yet. Even I've even been trying to imagine I wonder if I'll ever get around to this, but a show. I was picturing a show where the guitars are all suspended in the air over the stage, facing down, so the string is hanging down, and to be able to move around, walk around, have them all, attached to a certain note, so have this sort of melodic moving thing where I can just grab a string and have it. There's like,
This is our Fretboard Summit project. We need to do this.
Yeah. Is this how it works? Is you kind of
totally
get to workshop these insane ideas that could only be done with.
You have an open invite.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
And there are plenty of guitars there that we could hang from a ceiling.
Okay. Yeah. We need, ones that nobody's too precious about, that you can just tie it on there. If you're willing to go along with me for that.
Of course.
Okay. All right. Okay. Well, let me see about moving, get my schedule opened up. Yeah.
Where do you see this all going? Like, do you see yourself eventually making an entire suite of music using this technique, or do you have other ideas?
Well, the first thing that happened was I got a lot of requests on Instagram. People were saying, "Can you do, the theme song from Sea of Thieves? Can you do One by Metallica? Can you do, And that was actually really exciting at first. I was like, oh yeah, I could do that. I could do that too. Oh, I could probably think of a way to pull that off. And then I started thinking, wait a minute, I don't want to just turn this into a jukebox concept. Play Purple Rain with the string now. So I don't know. And also, it's interesting. the response it got on Instagram, I've been posting tutorial things and ideas about music on Instagram for the last couple years, with a few hundred views here, maybe 1,000 there. I really just ideally for me, it's just one more thing that I can offer people that are curious about the guitar. I think, I don't totally understand how Instagram works, what draws people in, what they expect from you once you put things out. So I'm kind of just trying to do whatever I feel in the moment, and trying to keep the basic tutorial stuff, the harmonic, melodic concepts on the guitar theory. Try and keep that a part of my equation. I also will spend 2 weeks. 2 weeks will go by and I won't do anything. Just it's kind of. It's still it's still pretty new to me, and I was just thrilled that enough people were mystified by an acoustic instrument in 2026 for a day.
But as of right now, we're talking March 2026. You don't have a vision for like a larger concept.
I'm open. This is the first time I've considered it, and it actually sounds like a pretty cool idea.
The Bach cello suites on a J-45.
The one thought I had was I would love to hear 20 guitars doing this at the same time. I'd love an orchestra. I'd love to put together an ensemble. And actually, after the first video of that string technique that I did got so much attention, the next video I made was a call to arms. Like, hey, if you're into this, here's how I do this. Yeah. Send me your video of you doing this. And the first thought I had was to compile a sort of collage of people. I said the parameters were it's got to be in D so they could all work together. And that's it. That's the only parameter. Whatever else you want to do is cool. As long as D major so they can all work together. But I would. Yeah, I'd love to do a live on. So I'm kind of waiting for once this album cycle ends and touring slows down. I'd like to put together an ensemble, and I think like 20 people could be a good number for it, just so that the melodies have that kind of strength to them. Although even 5 people doing it would be a cool sound.
That would be even easier to do at the Fretboard Summit. We had Bill Frisell lead a guitar orchestra at the summit. You could totally do this.
Yes. Simple melody, maybe pick some traditional songs, pick some, weird, I don't know. You got about an hour up there in the ensemble. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. An hour.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it takes 5 minutes to learn the technique, not even 2 minutes, and you just pick a repertoire. And everyone just, plays on one string I love this idea.
Well, pause on that. This works on electric guitars too, right?
It works even better on electric. Actually, it's easier, more responsive, louder. For some reason, electrics, really. Acoustics, you have to pull a little bit harder, a little more tension, just like an acoustic is compared to electric. So, yeah, it works on basses, works on harps, violins. I've even made it work on a cymbal before, just attaching it, because really it's just transferring vibration.
Switching gears for a minute, you talked about your dad being a dentist and how he served some of the immigrants in your hometown growing up. I hear world music in literally almost everything you play. Is that sort of the origin story of where you started to immerse yourself in the music of other cultures?
Yes. Andrew and I were really fortunate. Just the timing just worked out in our favor in terms of being exposed to music from West Africa, from Mali specifically, in the mid-90s. And as the story is, one guy came over to teach at Brown. His name was Abdul Doumbia. to teach percussion and dance classes at Brown. And within about a year, he'd brought, 6 or 7 of his friends. They were all my brother or my cousin, but we can never exactly. When I would say, how are you related? And he would say, well, he's my brother's wife's best friend's son. It's like they were all related. That's all we needed to know. And they all, lived in a certain kind of in this one building over in North Providence. And one of them walked into my dad's office one day to get his teeth fixed. And my dad describes it as like just a nightmare. So like the poor guy's teeth, he said he'd probably never seen a dentist. Whether that's true or not, I don't know, but he said it was really bad and his teeth were hurting. And my dad fixed up his teeth and he did it for free. Or had asked, would you exchange the dental work for drum lesson, music lessons for my sons? And he was so happy to oblige. He told all the dudes. They all ended up going to see my dad. My dad repaired the teeth of this whole community of Malian musicians. So Andrew and I we were welcome. The door was swung wide open for us, and we were like, 15, 16, 17 years old, and got to hang with these guys while they would sit and like they'd watch TV, but they wouldn't watch the show. They'd just watch the commercials. They found the commercials hilarious. Whatever it was they were selling, they would just laugh at these ridiculous commercials and then mute the TV when like Law and Order came on. And
this is crazy.
Yeah, I that was one of the first things I noticed was they love the commercials. Okay. I started appreciating commercials more after that.
Was this like at a community center or was this one of their homes?
No, this was in their home. This was in their home in an apartment complex in Providence. And they make this amazing peanut stew with lamb and rice and sit and play. They'd mute the TV and just pass around it was really like, oh, this is where improvisation came from.
Yeah.
Because they were just locked on a groove. There's probably a name for whatever traditional rhythm they were playing, Malayan rhythm that had its purpose and its use. And they would just pass it around the circle, everyone taking their solos. Most of the time they deferred to like 1 or 2 guys who were like the masters.
Wow.
That was the respect they had for those, so it's like an amazing, to me, like a total master of the instrument, but he revered this guy so much that he wouldn't solo in his presence. In Abdul's presence, Mamadou wouldn't take a solo because it was almost disrespectful.
Wow.
So the reverence they had for the craft and the joy they had in just passing this around. And we were aspiring jazz musicians. So for me, it connected a lot of dots. The form, you have a form, you have a basic, whatever, you form it and you're passing it around. This is where that came from. The plasticity of taking something familiar and basically simple and seeing how far you can go with it. And like sometimes it just erupted in laughter just based on what the guy was, just the polyrhythms he was trying to insert in there. And of course we got to learn about the bell lines and these 6/8 patterns, that groove that underlies all this Malayan music and North African music. So yeah, again, we were just really fortunate to be where we were at the time we were. And I actually just saw Mamadou a couple weeks ago in Boston. We played some reggae at a reggae bar. Abdul was out in Colorado. Like these guys, made a lasting impression on us. Like friendships that I'm glad to say are still intact.
And they are professional musicians, or they were, or they're just trying to get by and they love music.
I mean, in Mali, they were really just guys that just knew all the songs. When they came over to Providence, they were djembe fola and master dance teacher. Like they, just like taking your taking that art out of that place and transporting it to Boston. It was, we were all it was nothing we'd ever heard before. I'm sure, I don't know what it was like in Mali for them. They were, probably just guys that played at the wedding, and the wedding came, you need to put an ensemble together. But over here, they were teaching at universities and stuff, because this music is that deep and warrants that much study. And for us, we absolutely dove into. I mean, we would have signed up for their classes, and we got to sit in on their classes. We took it all in. Yeah.
This seems like a scene out of a movie, like two young future musicians hanging out with these guys. This is wild.
Yeah. When I think back at the time, we were just like, well, let's just try and hang out with these guys as much as possible. And when I think back on it, I'm like, I hope that's still happening somewhere for some teenage kids, that they're getting the exposure. I mean, I posted that story at the time when, Trump and ICE were just tearing through the immigrant communities and trying to detain anyone that wasn't looking like them, eating. So, and people that were in the process of having getting their legally obtained citizenship or paperwork. So I was just in the time, at the moment, I thought, like, if that had been happening at this time, none of these guys would have ended up in our community. And I think currently there is a ban on all work visas from, I don't know if Mali's included on that list, but from so many countries where where musicians would, I think right now there's a group, I can't remember, from Nigeria who just had to cancel their whole U.S. tour because of immigration policy. So I felt really compelled to share my experience with a bunch of guys from Mali who absolutely turned our world upside down and gave us so much.
Yeah, of course. And what foresight from your dad? What a gift. I mean, how many dads would do that?
Yeah, he did this for, because his office, we grew up in Providence, right next to the RISD campus. So a lot of his patients were RISD art students. So we also have tons of like student art in our house. Some of my good friends were just regulars with my dad, and some really beautiful, wonderful experimental paintings that my dad never would have ended up owning. He kind of became an art appreciator through that.
Was he trading art for dentistry too?
Exactly. Yeah, he was getting paintings for dental work. He just liked to help people out. I a great dad. Yeah, he always, and he wasn't necessarily musical himself. He had a guitar around, but he did everything he could. Once he saw that Andrew and I, how lit up by music we were, he just made sure, that we all fixed up the basement together. If we needed rides to gigs or to concerts, he was always there to drive. He drove us to our first Grateful Dead concert in Hartford, like 2 hours away in Hartford. 7 of us piled in a car, dropped us off at the front door, said, "I'll see you in 3 hours, guys," and picked us back up. Just a really supportive dad. I'm just like very fortunate. And he loved being a dentist. That's another thing that I gleaned off him was I watched him love his job. He loved connecting with people. That was one thing that he unwittingly passed down to us, was like, love your job. Just if you're going to do it, and as much as you're going to end up doing it, just make sure you love it. And, he never said that to us, but I just watched him do this work. And it was because of the people that he touched that he loved his job. Like you're doing.
Yeah.
You get to offer something to people and get a response. It's joyful.
Yeah. No pressure for you to be a dentist?
I never. My dad, bless his heart, he never tried to push that on me, but he has a love of cars as well, and I never got the bug for cars. I'm not a car guy at all. He even bought a build your own engine kit one Christmas, thinking, I'll share this with so we'll build an engine together.
For a particular car? Or?
No, it was a replica, a model engine, that I don't think worked in any car, but was for a great thing to know. Here's how an engine works, so you know what that is. You're gonna use engines a lot in your life. Might as well know how they work. It was a really thoughtful thing and great idea. But Andrew and I did not. It sat in the box. We were too fascinated by the guitars and the drums and the making music.
Where did you get this beautifully worn Gibson J-45 that we're both looking at?
Well, there is a little story, not necessarily about this one, but involves this guitar. So we're looking at a 51 J-45 that is almost identical to this 54 J-45 that my uncle left to me when he passed away. He died pretty young. He died at 59, and he left to my brother, myself, and to his daughter, Amanda, several guitars, including a 54 J-45. And Amanda, his daughter, was like, you're the obvious one to take care of this guitar. So why don't you just keep it? And maybe when her son, when my son is old enough, maybe he can get it back. I was like, that sounds like a great deal. Okay, no problem. I'll keep the guitar. And then one night in New York City, it was stolen out of the back of my Honda Civic, which was, I remember falling on the ground and laying with my face on the pavement for about half an hour and not moving. After that happened, one of the most brutal days of my life, losing that guitar, having it stolen. So I made it my mission. I will replace that guitar no matter what it takes. And one day that one was sitting in the Chelsea Guitars in New York City, right right next to the Chelsea Hotel. It was an awesome guitar store. I can't remember the guy's name. We've met several times since then. Super cool guy and great collection of guitars. And so I bought this. I saved up and I bought this guitar to replace that family heirloom. So when my cousin Teddy is old enough, I have something to offer him.
Aw, I love that. That's sweet. Not sweet that it got stolen, but the you finding this one.
Yeah, that was hard, but it's hard thinking of it's really hard when you connect with an instrument to think of it in the hands of like a thief and then getting passed off to some pawn shop. Like, we really care for these instruments. Like, they take on personalities, and I really thought of how sad the guitar must be at this moment to be handled by someone with low character who would steal it.
Do you still look for it?
I gave up. I think I for about 5 years. I had the marks, serial number, but I don't know where it ended up. It's a real shame.
For folks tuning in who maybe aren't familiar with you, we've been talking about your guitar technique, which is incredible. We've been talking about the influence of the musicians from Mali. But you just have a new record out called Let It Hiss. And this, to me, feels really like a pop record. Do you want to tell us about it?
I mean, we traditionally have worked kind of slow compared to other artists. 3 years between albums has pretty much been our cycle, with like an EP here and there. But this one, so we'd finished Queens of the Breakers, the 2018, I think, 17 or 18 release. Toured on that for a good year, and we're kind of just gearing up to get into the next cycle of things. And then the pandemic hit, and then we're all stuck inside. And I think Andrew and I really leaned into the opportunity to not go on the road for a minute, to relax, and not throw ourselves into that cycle again. Of course, the pandemic, it slowed down. My writing actually slowed down for a while because I suddenly didn't have the context to. I think I always wrote for for eventually presenting these songs live, and suddenly I just kind of couldn't place how that was going to go. And I also myself was like kind of ready to shake out of a lot of old patterns. You know, I won't spend too much time on it, but like maybe a lot of people, I don't know, I needed to get sober. That was a big one for me. I needed to just, I think the pandemic, you know, all the isolation, it ended up becoming something I was like, you know what? I haven't been able to finish a song in over a year. I feel like I kind of just stopped believing myself there. And, you know, I don't blame the pandemic. I don't blame anything other than when given the opportunity, I leaned that way, and I wanted to lean in a different direction. I wanted to lean into clarity. And I knew that the songs that I had started, we're going to have to get something new out of me to finish the songs that were like sort of on the table, which were all in fragments. I knew that in order to get those songs to the finish line, I was going to have to sort of flip my script a bit. So spend a minute kind of wrapping my head around the idea of sobriety, because I was a pretty substance dependent person for years. After 20 years in the music, touring, I you know, not blaming that either, but feel free to chop all this out of the interview also.
No, it's great. I'm sure this is going to be helpful for someone if they're listening to this.
If one person does. So I was stuck as a writer, stuck as a bandmate, stuck as a guitar player, and I just traced it all back to that. I was like, you know what? I think a lot of stuff is connected to that for me. Connected to that weight. So when I cut that off, really, I can say that like fairly soon after, things started to come back, and I started to, just the process of sacrifice and you know, having to sacrifice a thing that I loved, and all the stuff that started to come with that, all the gifts that come with that. I started to write music that I could believe in, and that felt really joyful. And I think that's why this record sounds like kind of like a pop record. There was joy, and there's suddenly, I don't have to curate this experience for anyone at all. I just have to make myself and Andrew happy. I just have to do what we do, and happiness and inspiration just started coming.
So cool. So cool.
Yeah.
And the hiss reference is a reference to a tape machine?
Well, actually. Andrew mentioned that in an interview, but actually the truth is it came from this one pedal I have first, and then it also was applied to the tape machine. But Effector 13 was a pedal company, I think out of the Northwest or maybe Texas. Devi Ever was the pedal maker, and it was called the Truly Beautiful Disaster pedal. It was just a really wild octave fuzz with a gate in it that I used on the title track, Let It Hiss, and of course creates all this noise floor. And we're asking our engineer, should we get this out, and should we try and like apply some, you know, some kind of isotope filter or something? And his answer was, well, why don't, you know, just let it hiss. I don't remember who said it. If it was him, he was like, we could just leave it in there. And, you know, we've got all this tape. We had a 1/4-inch tape machine too, which also created this big noise floor. And that was the same. Enough times of that coming up, and just, you know, let's just roll with it. Let's roll. I never minded hearing, you know, on Zeppelin records, you can hear tons of hiss. And then that just became kind of an ethos for the whole thing, for the whole project, the whole album, you know, and then for our lives too. Like, okay, it's the dirt under our fingernails that gives our whole experience some merit. And it's, you know, in my journey too, it was all the rough was all the rough times. It was all the hard stuff. It was all the mistakes and all the warts that I eventually just decided to come out with and be like, this is a mess. This is a mess. I'm not going to try and hide this anymore. Let's just talk about it. Let's just let it lay here on the table and talk about it. And in that same way, it was like very in keeping to let all the noise in and enjoy the noise and they title the record "Let It Hiss."
I love that. It's such a good record.
Thank you. I'm really proud of it. And it's I think it's got just enough of the what we've done in the past and just enough of friends of mine who know the Slip from before the Barr Brothers have said, like, this is actually like maybe the closest I've felt the Slip to what the Barr Brothers is doing, just in that, like, there's like a kind of some electric experimentation, a lot more electric experimentation, a little less refined, a little more explosive. So I feel like it's kind of a great mix of everything we've ever done and leading up to this.
Yeah. Brad, thank you so much. I know you have to go sound check in a minute. I knew you were close to here. I wanted to get you in here to talk about the string trick and everything else that you're up to. And I'm just so glad we had this chat.
Yeah. If nothing else, if that gets out there and someone somewhere.
You must get tagged all the time by people mimicking your string trick.
I forget to check that. Okay. I just discovered that recently. Oh, mentions or something. I was like, oh, that exists. I can. So, but yeah, if one person just decides to do that, and I'm always curious how people can take that further than what I did. Cause like I said, I just lifted it from Nicolae and have found my own way to do it. I hope someone else takes it, and finds their way of using it.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jason.
All right, that was my conversation with Brad Barr of the Barr Brothers. I hope you loved it. I hope to see a whole bunch of you at our summit in August. Drop me a line if you ever have any questions. And if you love the show, if it's a big part of your life, leave us a review over on Apple Podcasts so that others can hear how cool it is. Thanks so much. Till next week.